Hey, good evening. I'm Christian and this is going to be part 5 of building the progressive web app with React. Previously we've ended up building the whole of the application, well, the simple application, and writing our unit tests and things for it. The next kind of thing to do is to create a production build and see if we can kind of get it in production. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're also going to be using Webpack to give us our production bundle. And a few other things. What we're doing is we'll be putting source maps in place. We'll be implementing cache busting, so we can basically store our assets in the client's browser for a long period of time and update the hash of the URL when a new bundle comes along, so the client can get the new JavaScript and new app. We'll do a little bit of minification, so we'll try and make the app as small as possible. And we'll also use the Common Chunks plugin to separate our vendor dependencies to our apps dependencies. Hopefully, if that all goes well and everything goes smoothly, then we'll end up deploying our app to surge.sh and run a bit of a Lighthouse test against our app. Lighthouse, for anyone who's familiar, is Google's, imagine they're like page speed insights test that they have, and it's that but a test for progressive web apps. So it tests for offline support, HTTP2 support, a bunch of other things, making sure your web app will be really comfy on a mobile phone. It'll work offline. You'll get the nice little app icon if you were to pin it to your home screen, and all things like that. So yeah, let's crack on, and we'll start with Webpack and just begin to slowly build up our bundle and work it step by step. If you are following live, then yeah, please by all means pop in the chat, fire your questions. I'll try and remember to keep checking the chat and not get too engrossed in the code. And then yeah, let's just kind of carry on and do this. So just checking the stream at the minute, actually. Just making sure the stream's actually pumping out. Yeah, cool. It is. Whew, mild panic attack there. Cool. Okay, so first things first. Lovely, lovely Webpack. Let's dive into this. So one thing you'll notice is that we have our Webpack conf file. And this is very much set up for the production, for the development side of things. We have the dashboard plugin that we're using. We are linting our code. We're using the dev server. We're outputting a file just to bundle.js. All things that kind of need to be tweaked in order to kind of create a proper production bundle. So first things first is I'm just going to make a copy of this development Webpack config, throw it into a production config file, and start just to take out any of the development dependencies. So let's do that now. So I'll call this webpack.prod.js, and I'll just throw in everything that was in the development config. So I'm going to rip out the dev server and the linting. We're not going to need that. And the dashboard plugin. So this should be able to give us just a regular development build without any development server or any extra checking kind of going on. So if we do a yarn, in fact, what we're going to have to do first is create a little script for it. So if we were just to say build for our production build, and we can call Webpack. Again, Webpack isn't installed globally, but what npm does when it notices you're running something in the script is it appends your node module's bin directory to your path, so we can execute things out of our local installs. So we can do webpack -config, and I believe the path we need is just webpack.prod.js. So if we did a yarn run build, if all goes well, yeah, perfect. So all we've done there is we've just simply built a development bundle, and it's rather big, 898 kilobytes in size, which is certainly something what we don't want to push to production. It's absolutely huge in size. So there's going to be a few things where we can do to kind of decrease that in size. So first things first, a nice thing that Webpack has for us is it's recently had a pull request from some of the guys at Google, I believe, and they've added this performance kind of side to Webpack. And what this is basically going to do is it's just going to let us know when our bundle sizes are too big and give us warnings or errors once a particular bundle hits a specific size. Now it's set up with fairly respectable default configurations, and you can read a lot more about it on this Webpack performance budget link, which links to the issue in GitHub of all the stats and testing what they've done, and they've come up with some fairly sensible defaults which you can override if you decide not to agree with them. But we can give it a max bundle size when we want to warn us that it's close to reaching that point, so we can start to split our files out into separate smaller bundles. So first things first is let's just get this warning for us, because we should be able to easily make this throw a warning for us. Default configuration is going to be 250 kilobytes for an asset. Ours is 800, so fingers crossed if this plugin works correctly, then, sorry, it's not a plugin, if this little configuration works properly, we should get a warning that our bundle's too big. So we can throw performance in here, and once we've got our performance in there, we can throw in the fact our hint is going to be an error. So if we were to bundle now, excellent. And it's done exactly what it said it was going to do. It's thrown an error. So the asset size limit is exceeded the recommended size limit, 250 kilobytes. So this is great. We can keep an eye and keep a track of how big our bundle is, make sure it's not going to go to crazy amounts without us knowing. And yeah, the error just prevents that from happening, which is good. So another thing what's good in production is source maps. Source maps are a nice way of, once you've got all your minified code, if you were to hit an error in production, a bit of a runtime error, you may get a traceback and it'll say, oh, this happened in bundle.js, line 2, character 30,973 at function X. It doesn't mean anything. It's going to be so difficult to debug. So source maps are a nice way of being able to kind of work your way back. So that error that happened maybe at line 3000 or whatever, it's able to map it back to its unbuilt state in the application. So we can then say when the error does happen and we get the source map in place, we can trace that back to the source file and the real function using like the proper unbuilt function names. So again, something really handy to have in place. So in order to do this, we have the dev tool, and there's a number of different dev tools that Webpack give us out of the box, and you'll notice we've got source maps here. Let me just make this a little bigger. We've got source maps here, which is what we're going to use in production. And this is great. It takes a long time to build, so it's a very expensive kind of process. But the ability to map it back to the original source is brilliant. If we were doing this in development, we wouldn't enable source maps. Simply, the time and the overhead of generating the source maps, too great for development. We want quick, fast feedback. So there's like cheaper alternatives, less expensive options. So if you were in development, you could use eval to be super quick and easy and super fast. Or you could kind of like step it up a little bit and get a cheap eval source map. And it's not going to map perfectly back as well as a real source map will, but it'll do a pretty good job and certainly point you in the right direction. So anyway, we'll keep our dev tool at source map. Excellent. So, with Webpack 2, they also have included the ability for us on the command line to just specify a -p option for production. This does three things. First thing what it's going to do is it's going to set the node env to production, which we'll go into kind of how that kind of helps React in a minute. It's going to minify our code using Uglify JS, and it runs a loader options plugin. I'm not sure what that is. As far as I can gather from the documentation, it's some kind of transitional tool from Webpack 1 to Webpack 2. It's pretty hard to understand exactly what it's doing, but this is a nice easy way of just adding that -p to enable a rough production mode. So let's try building now. In theory, if it's in production mode, once it's minified, it should be far, far smaller than A98, but we'll probably get another error. And come on. I can't hit my mouth. Okay. I was expecting an Uglify error actually. And the Uglify error I was expecting is because we're not transpiling all the way back to ES5 code. We're keeping all of our kind of ES 2015 code in place, and Uglify usually doesn't like that. But it seems to have gone through perfectly fine here. If for whatever reason you're having issues with Uglify JS, then one thing you can do is, and they've got pretty good documentation for this in their plugins, is there's an Uglify Webpack plugin. And what you can do is this plugin allows you to specify which version of Uglify you want to use. So for a good couple of years now, Uglify JS has had a Harmony branch, Harmony being what eventually came ES6 and ES 2015. And this branch has support for being able to parse and understand the newer JavaScript syntax. So you can tell the Webpack, hey, don't just use the regular latest version of Uglify JS, go use this Harmony branch. So once you've installed the plugin, you install Uglify based on the Harmony branch. Hopefully you can see that. And then just include the plugin like you would, and that's it. So that's what I was going to expect to have to do, but for some magical reason it's working. So let's just not touch it, and hopefully things will work out nicely. So there's a reason we need the node env, if I can say it properly, the node env to be production. And this is because quite a lot of packages, and specifically we just talk about React, by default run in development mode, and the development mode has loads of developer hints and warnings, such as prop types, or if you're iterating over a load of items, everything should have a key that's uniquely assigned to it. And React's going to do kind of all this checking while you're kind of in development mode. Are the prop type's correct? Have I got a key? And if you haven't, it's going to give you a load of developer warnings, and this is really handy in development. But what we don't want is we don't want React to perform any of these checks in production, as they should probably, in theory, have been ironed out in the development stage. So to pop React into production mode, we need to set the if I can say that word, that'd be great. Node env to production. Then that's going to trigger that for us, and it's not going to do the checks, and it's going to cut out a load of extra dead code which doesn't need to be there for the production bundles. So that's perfect. So a few more things what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to use our extract text Webpack plugin to extract all the CSS into a separate style sheet to be included in production. We don't really want that CSS being included in our JavaScript bundle. So that's something we need to do. Another thing that would be nice to do is to split the app and the vendor code up separately. So let's do that now. We'll have a little dive into the Common Chunks plugin and see how to use that. So again, Webpack has pretty good documentation for the Common Chunks plugin. If I can find it. And I'm on the wrong part of the site, so that doesn't help. Okay, list of plugins, Common Chunks plugin. Cool. Okay, so there's a fair amount of documentation there, but it's fairly easy to kind of get set up and working with this. So instead of having a single output, an output given to a single file name, we'll basically have to create multiple outputs. But before we do this, we probably want to have our file names hashed. So in order to do this, we can say, we can just rename our file to something like name, which is the name of our particular bundle. Default is going to be main. We specify a chunk hash. Chunk hash is the asset's individual kind of hash that's associated with it, and we're just doing :6 to limit it to 6 characters long. And then every time the contents of this file are updated, the hash is updated, and therefore the long-term caching is kind of going to pick up this new file and kind of run with it. And yeah, we can set max age headers and all those kind of things on here. So if I just quickly build with this, what we should see is instead of a bundle.js file, we should see our main file with the hash in there, and it's perfect. And if we didn't spot it before, then we also do have a map file that's being output now from our DevTools source map. And again, it's pretty chunky. It's 2 meg in size. It's always way larger than the actual JavaScript file. But don't worry about that. That's not going to be loaded into the browser for the average user. It's only loaded in if you've got your DevTools open. So yeah, we're safe on that front. Okay, so let's change this. Instead of having an output file name, we're going to change this ever so slightly. I'm going to say our app code, and we're going to give that an entry. Oops, sorry, this is the output section. I need this in the entry. So we're going to say our app, and we'll give it an input of our index.js file. And we'll also create a vendor file. This vendor file, we can specify what packages we want to be in here if we wanted to name them explicitly. So for example, we could say React, we could say React DOM, another package we use is React Router. So we could specify various packages off here, or alternatively, the Commons Chunk plugin will generally look for modules that are shared between at least 3 files, and it will just automatically push them into this chunk, which we're calling vendor. So another thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tidy up the configuration a little bit. So I have this source dir which I'm referencing in a couple of places, and rather than doing that, I could just set the context of Webpack to say, do you know what, by default, do everything from our source directory. So I could just say pick up our index.js file from the source, and again here with the index.html file. So let's see where that gets us. Come on, build all the things. Okay, this is great. So what we can see is we've got an app file, we've got our vendor file, and we've also got the map file for our vendor as well. The thing what's a little bit concerning is our app file is 209 kilobytes and our vendor file is 190. So our app size is suspiciously large. Our app code should be way, way smaller than our vendor file, purely because our app is so simple. So the reason for this is React, Redux, sorry, we're not even using Redux, React Router, what was that other thing we were using, React DOM, they're all being pushed into the app file and the vendor file. So one thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to enable the commons chunk plugin and just say, hey, all of these common chunks, go throw them in the vendor file, please. So we have a Webpack new Webpack dot optimize the American way commons chunk plugin, and here hopefully we can just specify a name and not have to give it any more kind of configuration options. We can give it different configuration options if we wanted to go against the norm and the default. So for example, we can say that we can give it the name of the bundle that we want to push it into. We can specify the minimum chunks if we wanted to change that. But we'll just keep everything the same. We don't need to be kind of modifying any of that stuff. And as you can see, actually, another thing we're doing is we're just dumping all of our files. Oh, come on, Atom. Can't handle big files. We're just dumping all of our files just in the middle of our directory, our root directory at the minute. So we're going to change the output in a second. So if we just run another build, hopefully what we should see is all of those vendor files that were in our app should have been stripped out and only included in our vendor file, and they're not. So this is possibly because come on, Atom, just crash already. Thanks, little buddy. Yeah, close. I'll open you back up in a minute. Let's ignore it. Okay. So, 1 second. Projects. Let's open that up. And I want to share that with that window. Another thing what I want to do is I just want to start deleting a few of these files. Perfect. So before we do another build, I'm going to specify a directory for them to go into. So the way to do that would be to have a path, what we're going to chuck them into. So we could just resolve the dir name and throw them in a dist folder. Fairly common name. Just these are our files we're going to distribute. Therefore, we throw them in a dist folder. And let's try and not open any more of those up with Atom. It's seriously not going to like it. Okay, so what we can do now is we can just try and get my head back in it after that crash. Where were we? Haha, yes. Well, what was happening is we just weren't building properly. So we can specify the name of vendor, and that's just going to match up with that vendor name there. So let's give that another build now. Okay, so it's complaining saying Webpack's not a thing, which is just because we need to import Webpack. So easy to make mistakes and just forget things as you're going along. Cool. Perfect. Okay. I don't remember where I've seen that kind of short syntax before. Maybe it was only a Webpack 1 thing, and we need to, I think maybe now it's compulsory for the common string plugin to receive an object and explicitly give it a name rather than just passing a string to common string plugin. But that's cool. So our app code is only 19 kilobytes now, and our vendor code is 191, which is far, far better than it was before. And as you can see, everything's being output into this dist folder, which I'm not going to open in Atom. Again, lesson learned. Okay, so things are fairly good. The problem is if we just keep building, keep changing our files, keep building, our dist folders are eventually just going to fill up with all these random files. So a nice way, or a nice thing to do here, is there's a clean plugin for Webpack, which will basically just clean the directory every single time we build. So we know at any particular point in time, the files in there related to that specific build, and we're not leaving any legacy builds, any files from legacy builds in place. So let's throw that into the mix now. So for this, there's a plugin called the Clean Webpack plugin, and it's super simple to set up. So we're going to have to install it, so yet another dependency. So yarn add dev Clean Webpack plugin. We're going to have to require it at the top of our file and then add it to our plugins list here. Let's just keep these alphabetized. Okay. So our Clean Webpack plugin is going to do one thing only. It's going to clean our dist directory. So if we throw in an array here and just say dist, or it's just to throw in a new file in here called hello.txt, I just simply want to prove that it's going to clear everything out and throw in a whole new batch of files again for this fresh build. Come on, do your thing. No. Come on, work this time. Cool. So, first things first. Hello.txt is gone, which is great. The one thing we are struggling with at the minute, actually, is Uglify has reared its head up at long last, and is giving us the issue I was kind of expecting to get earlier, which is good, because I really kind of wanted to show this off in case anybody is just wanting to build an app for modern browsers and does want to do the whole transpilation back to ES5. So, one thing we can do now is we can do that plugin. What was it called? The Uglify plugin. So we're using Yarn, so we can just copy this Uglify Webpack plugin, throw that in only once. Perfect. I'm going to have to specify which specific version of Uglify we want to use. And we want to use the Harmony branch. So let's install Uglify, or this specific branch of Uglify here. Come on, download the whole internet. Excellent. And then all we need to do is simply just register this as a new plugin, which is quite nice. We've got the flexibility to do this. Before this plugin kind of came along, it meant forking Webpack and literally just changing their dependencies to point to the Harmony branch. But it's nice we don't have to do that anymore. So I hope this works. If not, we'll revert to the old school way of doing things and use the forked version. Damn. Something went major wrong there. So, this could be a number of different things. What I'm going to do is as good as that was to try, I'm going to try and cheat a little bit. And the version of Webpack I'm going to use hang on a minute, before I do this, just noticing we're still using the release candidate version of Webpack. So I'm going to just update to actual version 2 of Webpack just to see if that's going to help us out at all. It possibly won't, but I'd like to try that first. So yarn, what am I doing? Yarn, info, Webpack, time, just see what's the latest and greatest. Okay, so we can install Webpack at that version. Okay, yarn. And we were on quite an old release candidate, I think. Are we on version 4? Possibly so. Add into dev Webpack. Okay, so we've got the newer version of Webpack installed. And let's see if this will build. If it's going to play up, we'll use a version I forked a while ago. And they're still messing up. Cool. So, instead of that specific version here, I'm just going to point it to an old little friend of mine. Webpack hash version 2.2. Cool. And I can remove both of those now. Let's give this a go. Let's just make sure we install those packages, clean the old packages up that I removed. And actually, within our production Webpack file, how did I remove that? Is that why it's kicking up a fuss? Let's just see if this builds. If it does, we'll run with it for now and figure the whole mess out later. Cool, this is built. Nice. So we're in our dist directory, which is cool. And what else have we got to do? Got a deployment, basic deployment build coming up. And a quick read of the notes, see if there's anything else I kind of want to cover. There probably is, and I probably didn't write it down. Okay, so yeah, we're not actually extracting the CSS into a separate style sheet at the minute. So, if you haven't watched any of the other series, by the way, this is the basic app we've created, a simple blog where you have a blog list page, blog detail page, and a simple about us page. So one thing I can do is I can cd into the dist directory and have old school habits. Tell Python to run a simple HTTP server, which should fire up on port 8000. And this will give us the current state of our production build app. Okay, and it's working. But what we can see is we're just getting styles thrown into the head that the JavaScript is creating. So I think if I viewed source, we're not actually getting the CSS file pushed out into there. So that'll be the next thing to tackle. In fact, let's keep. Okay, so let's close that down for now. Kill it with fire. Die. Cool. So the extract text plugin is what we're going to use. I believe we touched on that in a previous episode, but wasn't kind of required to kind of keep that on for development purposes. So let's just add it back in, yarn dev. And this is the extract text Webpack plugin. And we're going to have to make a little bit of a change to our CSS loader here in order for it to take effect. So const extract text plugin. And that's equal to require extract text plugin. Perfect. So this needs to go in our CSS section here, where we have all of this goodness. So I can remove that, and here just call the extract function on here, and inside of here we can just specify what other loader we're going to use. So we're going to use the CSS loader. And there's three things I think we're going to use. We're going to use CSS modules. I have a local ident name here to copy from before. So I'm just going to cheat on that one. And then we want everything to be camel case. And again, I went into a lot of these kind of configuration options in, I think it was video 2, about all CSS modules and sorting and setting all of that up in the project. So if you want to know more about that, go watch that video. And okay, let's give that another build, see if that works. Why you be mean? Oh God. It's here. Now run build. Oh, I'm in the dist folder. Damn. Okay, I think this is the old version of the plugin. Wow. There are so many mistakes tonight. No, it's there. Module failed. So the error, extract text Webpack plugin loader, is used without the corresponding plugin. Is it? Refer to GitHub. Okay, computers generally don't lie. Although I wish they did, because that would make me look a little bit better at this moment in time. Embarrassing. Okay, so just check back on a couple of notes and see what we're missing. Hopefully nothing too much. Extract text Webpack plugin. Okay, let me just install a different version that I've used before. Aha. Oh, this is amazing. This is when people watching really begin to help you out and start to spot your derps. Okay. The one thing I haven't done is I haven't included the plugin. Thank you for the message. Yeah, I just had a colleague message me saying, oh, by the way, you've probably not added it into your plugin section. So again, similar thing to before, is we just give it a new name. So we're going to say, we want our style sheet to be called styles.chunk hash. Again, we're limiting that to 6 characters. Throw .css on there. And I am 100% sure this is going to pass this time. I'm not 100% sure at all. So, let me just copy this whole line here. In fact, while I'm building all of these things, I should probably take something like source maps off just so it happens a bit quicker. Now, the other thing I used, I have used an older version in the past, and I wonder if it's like a new package. So I wonder if I install the older, slightly older version, if that's going to just help. And this is the fun of live coding. You get to see every single slip up. And I get to look a fool. So, while this happens, let's... Cool. This... that is a stunning message. Okay, so... looks like it's built. We've got our styles file being written out. We should be able to see that in our dist folder as well. Perfect. So let's go back into our dist folder and run the simple HTTP server. And hopefully this time what we should see that this extract text plugin is literally throwing the text out, the CSS out as a link tag on the page, instead of just bundling it in with the JavaScript and saying, hey, at runtime, generate the CSS. So, let's localhost this bad boy. Oh, yep, it's the Python server. 8000 is their thing. And there we go, our style sheet's been included, perfect. And it's there, perfect. And let's hope the app works, we can navigate around, nice. So that's pretty much it as far as kind of like the app's concerned. The one thing that would be really nice to do now is to get this kind of pushed to a kind of like a production kind of like environment. And there's a really nice service from a company called surge.sh, and they just do static web hosting. It's free if you use one of their custom domains, and it's a super simple service to use. There's very little configuration. You just throw your files up there, and it works. It's all over HTTPS. They automatically gzip kind of all your files and things like that. So yeah, it's a pretty good service. I recommend checking them out. They do I'm no way affiliated to these guys at all, but they do a paid for package where you can use your own custom domain, and you get a few more things included with that. So if that's your bag and you actually wanted to host a static site on here under your domain, you can do for $13 a month. Seems a little bit expensive, but I'm not to judge. So let's set up Surge. So Surge is an npm package to install. So yarn add Surge in here. Cool. That's installed a lot of things with it. So what we can do now is we can basically tell our package.json file to have a new script, which is going to be our deploy script. Our deploy script is going to call Surge. We're going to say use our dist directory, and the domain, let's use our blog's called a letter, so let's say the subdomain is going to be a letter.surge.sh. And fingers crossed, if this works, it will be a miracle. But we should be able to say yarn run deploy. And it should throw all the files in our dist directory up to their service, all cd end up, and let's see if it works. So let's visit it in the site. Perfect. So yeah, let's see if it works first. Let's see if it works. And it does. The one thing I think it's going to fall down on is it works if I land at the root domain, because it automatically picks up an index.html file. If I was to visit this page, 404 page, so it's obviously going to look for, I guess, something like that, and that doesn't exist. So Surge have a way around this, I believe, if I can find the documentation. Come on, just get started. So we can add a 200 page for client-side routing. So what we want to do is we basically just want to say, regardless of what kind of URL you want to come and hit at, we always just want to serve our index.js file. And from that, when our app kind of like begins to kind of kick up and all the JavaScript kicks in, the JavaScript's then going to pass the URL and then go, okay, yep, you're on this particular page, therefore that's what I need to render, and we'll do that in the process. So we need a 200.html file. So probably the easiest way to do this, and it might not be the best, but certainly just for this stage, is it's probably going to be best to, in our production Webpack file, is if we give this a file name. So we're going to output this file as 200.html. And actually, our build and deployment process are going to be pretty well tied in together. So I could create a pre-deploy task. And whenever I call deploy, npm has certain things it will look for, the scripts it will look for to run before and after that particular task. So if the task name has got pre-prepended to it, it's going to run that. If it's got post prepended to it, it would run that afterwards. So we have like pre-tasks and post-tasks. So whenever I run deploy now, it's going to do the build, and then it's going to deploy to surge. Or so it should do. After today's session, I'm not so confident. So, dist has been removed, so we can see it's using the clean operation. It's built our files, pushing to surge now. So I think we're good. Perfect. That's worked out quite nicely. And as you noticed, if I just load this particular page here, it works a treat. We're not getting the 404 page. One thing I just want to have a quick look at is under the network tab. If I refresh, you'll see we've got a HTML file, a CSS file, and 2 of our JavaScript files. Now, let's just filter by JavaScript. What we can see is when our app built, our vendor file was 191 kilobytes and our app was 10. What we can see, these sizes have reduced dramatically, and that's just because of the gzipping that's taken place afterwards. So actually, the amount we're shipping down to the browser isn't too bad, although I kind of argue that 54 kilobytes for React, React DOM, and React Router is a little bit larger than I'd like, especially for our kind of like super simple app. It feels pretty heavy. So there's ways we can look at decreasing this in the future. There's things like projects like Preact, which is a really super light version that you can kind of like shim in place for React, and that's only kind of 3 kilobytes, which is perfect. And we can basically instantly do the swap over with a simple change to our Webpack configuration. But if you haven't checked out Preact, certainly give it a look. It's exactly React. I say exactly React. The API is pretty much the same as React, and you can shim it in place if you didn't want to start a project up with this. So if you were already miles down the line of creating a project with React, you could just tell Webpack, hey, whenever you try and pick up React or React DOM, instead use Preact and it will just work. TM. But yeah, it's something worth having a look at. So yeah, it's loading pretty nicely. The one thing I do want to do quickly before we kind of wrap this session up is, I was talking about the Lighthouse tool from Google, and this analyzes web apps and web pages, and basically gives you a score out of 100 of how progressive your web app is. Now, it's not fully complete. There's a few things that kind of come in soon that they're kind of working on, but it gives you a good idea of, I don't know, if you love chasing numbers, it's a good game to play. So let's see if we can just quickly install this and give our app a little. I can't do that from here. So luckily, Here's one I've got earlier. Magic. So we've got our surge here, and it's all looking fine. So let's run like Lighthouse on it, and let's get a report going down. So as you can see, then we got the offline dinosaur, and that's one of the tests Lighthouse will do. It will test to see if your app will load whilst it's offline, which is surprisingly simple to do using Webpack. It's not too bad to do. Okay, so we got a 23 out of 100, which is slightly higher than I thought it would be, actually. So I should have a quick scan to see kind of what we failed at. So we haven't got a service worker registered, so our app can't load when it's offline, which is something we can solve fairly easy. Our time to first pane isn't too bad, and actually most of the speed is probably reasonably acceptable, actually. That's not too bad at all. So our site, is loading over HTTPS, and any HTTP traffic is diverted that way. We don't have a manifest file or any icons, which is great for if you wanted to pin your site to the home screen of a mobile app, which is pretty cool to do. We haven't implemented a custom splash screen. We have no brand colours. I haven't even put a viewport tag in here yet. We're not using HTTP2, which is a bit of a shame. And I think there was one section where it penalises you for only sending down the skeleton HTML. Yeah, okay, so this is this section here. Page contains some content when its scripts are not available. So your app should display some content when JavaScript is disabled, even if it's just a warning that the user has to use JavaScript required to use the app. And so this is where server-side rendering comes in place. If we were able to render the application server-side, generate a full fat body of HTML, send that down to the client can then view that HTML and see the page before any JavaScript has to kick in, which, as perceived performance is certainly going to help. So that's one limitation what we're not going to be able to get with Surge. We're not going to be able to kind of pre-render everything there. So it might not be a long-term solution as staying on Surge for this, but I think as a quick stage one of just being able to deploy it, it's been pretty good. So a few accessibility reports, and a few other little niggly things to do and tidy up. So I think that's probably where we'll leave the app for today, with our production bundle and our basic deployment. I haven't got the next episode planned, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a bit of a look into what we can do next. I really want to dive into a little bit of server-side rendering, although, oh god, I hate server-side rendering with a passion. Not because it's bad. I think what it gives you is great. It's just implementing it is a little bit of a pain, particularly when you need to be doing data fetching as part of your server-side rendering. That's when it gets hella complex and hair gets ripped out and everything. I also, would love to make the app load offline, which is fairly easy to do with a simple Webpack plugin. And get a few more of those points on Lighthouse. So I'll get planning the next session. If you know of anything I should be doing that I haven't done yet, please comment in the comment section down below. If there's something you really want to see, again, throw your comments down there. I've had requests like, hey, can we throw Redux in here? And I'd love to throw Redux into the app. The app just isn't complicated enough. There's not that much state to be managed to kind of warrant throwing Redux in there. So at the minute, I'm battling, do I put this in, do I not? And at the minute, I'm not putting Redux in there for now. But if there's anything else you want to see, then give me a nudge. If you've enjoyed the live stream, then hit a subscribe button and I'll notify you every single time I go live, just to really annoy you. Yeah, if you enjoyed the video, give it a quick thumbs up, that's much appreciated. And if you've got any kind of questions, feel free to also hit me up on Twitter. I think the link, and I can maybe point, is it this way or is it this way? Everything's backwards. Either way, it's down in the bottom left of the video. You hit me up on Twitter and yeah, we'll happily have a conversation, a little chat about anything there. But yeah, for tonight, let's wrap this up. It's been fun. And yeah, thank you very much. And I'll probably see you next Friday for part 6. See you later. Bye.